When's Travis Hunter coming back? Any idea?
I mean, we had heard that Deion had said it wasn't going to be for like 3 weeks, and obviously he's out 1. Honestly, now it'll help him to have him back if he's close to 100%. I just think this is just a brutal matchup for them. I don't think right now, if USC wanted to, Marshawn Lloyd, I think, could run for 250 yards on CU because I think they have so many issues to deal with in terms of just slowing down the run. I think last week was the first week we saw Shador, who'd been near flawless in the first 3 games, look like he was I don't want to say in over his head, but it was coming at him in waves. And that's a really talented front 7 that Oregon has.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's a road environment. It was just a lot. This was a big step up in class compared to, they beat TCU, and that was a good win on the road. In Nebraska, they turned the ball over. Jeff Sims had given them basically 2 turnovers to get the momentum in the first half. And then Colorado State, they had their hands full. Now they have Caleb and USC. And by the way, USC did not look very impressive last week. It was not a great game for the Trojans against a really, really mediocre Arizona State team on the road.
So is Oregon the best team in the Pac-12?
I wouldn't be ready to say that just because Washington has been just lighting people up with Kalen DeBoer's system and what Michael Penix has got going there. I think this is a fun time to look at the Pac-12 because even if USC wins, 55-21, people are going to go, yeah, that's the same team that Oregon just blew out. I think we're still on how much better is USC's defense because it was really awful last year. I think it's quite a bit better, but they haven't played anybody yet. And they've had moments where they've, had coverage mistakes and they've just looked like they're a big work in progress. Shador is better than what they've seen before, and he still has some good skill guys, but I don't know if they can protect them, and I just feel like people have a better feel for what to do against that offense that Deion's running there. But then you have not just Washington State quietly has been, people need to be talking more about what they've done. Cameron Ward has been fantastic. The new offense coordinator is a 27-year-old guy. He used to be an Uber Eats driver, and he's going to be a hot name. Fair or unfair, the only way they've gotten much attention after beating a really good Oregon State team last week was because Jake Dickert, their coach, had kind of poked at Lee Corso in his post-game comments, and that got a lot of ears and eyeballs. But they're the program that got left behind,
And then there's Utah.
Utah without Cam Rising, really nasty defense.
I feel like every week when you've been on in the last month, and again, we love having you here, Bruce Feldman, on Wednesdays right here on the Rich Eisen Show, that we talk about Deion, and then we talk about, man, I can't believe, like, of all the years for the Pac-12 to break up, they're as good as they've ever been, and the attention on them is as white hot as you could say. This is the most attention paid to this conference since Pete Carroll, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, and in that regard, back in those days when it was the Pac-10, you had Cal was really rolling. Obviously,
Aaron Rodgers was beating him.
Aaron Rodgers, he didn't, he's 23 completions in a row, almost beat them at the Coliseum. You had, Marshawn Lynch, then later you had Deshaun Jackson. Oregon was good, and then when Chip Kelly got there, they went to great. UCLA had that one terrific year with our buddy Maurice Jones. Now Maurice Jones-Drew was phenomenal. But it wasn't this deep, right? There were times when the Washington schools were atrocious. They were awful. They went from Neuheisel, and then eventually they just backslid off the radar. But now I feel like there's legit 7 big-time teams, and that doesn't even include, I think Colorado's probably going to come back to being a 6-6 kind of team, which is still way better than what anybody was expecting, and certainly what they were last year. But they gobbled up all the oxygen for the first month of the season, and it was great for everybody's business. I'm glad Dan Lanning pointed this out. Deion Sanders has been great for TV ratings. Deion Sanders in Colorado have been great for TV ratings. They've been great for all sorts of anybody whose business is around it, and they carried the ball for the first month of the season. I mean, they're still going to be interesting, but now I think you're going to get, Penix Caleb, Cam Ward, Bo Nix, and all these guys in that league.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't even talked about the, much other than Ohio State, Notre Dame last week, really about the Big Ten, because your school hasn't played anybody of note yet. And we'll see. Georgia's not played anybody of note. Those are the powerhouse programs that we expect to be there. But it's been an interesting kind of, I don't want to say subplot, but it's been fun.
And Dan Lanning, I think, gave voice to what a lot of other programs around the country are saying. It's like, hey, we're winning programs here too. You can pay attention to how we're doing it as well. It's just not as interesting or flashy or unique or whatever you want to say to the media. Because it's quite simple. You're not Deion Sanders, one of the most famous people on the sports scene for decades. But I didn't have a problem with what Dan Lanning had to say. I saw a lot of pushback about, you have flash too with your uniforms, or your concept of like you play for wins or fight for wins, not clicks, was captured on a camera you allowed into your locker room as well. I've heard a lot about that, but it is just a great bunch of competition, smack talk, that I don't recall from this conference, and it's pretty cool to see.
It is. I mean, I think good on Oregon. Like, he's a really good young coach.
Oh yeah, and
he's done a really good job building off what Mario Cristobal did there. And they're a physical team, and they have done. Bo Nix's, transition from really struggling in the SEC at Auburn to just
being the
taking
man.
Another level, in Eugene. And I think, what's really fun about how this team and that program is gone is, like, there's no reason to think they can't, like, be a legit national title contender. And they have a bunch of elite athletes. The quarterback's playing at a really high level. To some degree, the Caleb in USC against CU, the commonality there, in addition to obviously some celeb factor that around both programs and certainly around CU now, is last year I feel like Caleb took a lot of the oxygen away from some of the other star quarterbacks in the Pac-12. He won the Heisman. He was remarkable in that system. But I don't know how many fans outside of the Pacific Northwest know just how good Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix are and how good they're playing. And Cam Ward wasn't, he was fine last year in his first year in the conference, but he's taken it up to another level. And so, that expression, like a rising tide lifts all boats, I do think that's what's going on in the Pac-12 now. And I love that this conference is finally going to get its due, albeit, in a swan song era.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.